people. Yeah, we got one heck of a reputation to live up to, Macho brother. We have to be sharp. We have to be keen. We have to be ready, brother. I'm gonna be ready, yeah. Never before have I put so much trust in my partner.
We're seeing what this professional athlete in the world today. Look at this.
With perfect balance. Savage with the leap.
What are you wrestling with? The Man Series 3.0.
Well, I'm glad to have you guys here. You know, oftentimes when people ask, why in the world would you do a series just, focused on men? Like, are ladies allowed to come? And I would say this series is for dudes and the ladies that share your world with us. So this, ladies, is going to help you understand the guy in your life a little more. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, that makes sense. And for the dudes that are here, hopefully this is going to challenge you to be able to live out the life that God has designed for you. Because here's what I found as a guy. We need people to challenge us. Dudes love challenges. We like when somebody climbs up in our face and just pushes us a little bit to be who God called us to be. That's why the Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And so this series is about trying to sharpen each other as dudes so that we can be the men that God's called us to be. Because let me just tell you, our world needs some godly men. We need some godly men in this world that are willing to be who God called us to be. I read some interesting statistics. Listen to this. If a child starts coming to church, there is a 3.5% chance that the family will come to church as well. 3.5 if a kid begins coming. Check this out. If a mom starts coming to church, there is a 17% chance that the family will follow. Praise God for godly moms. But listen to this. If a dad starts coming to church, there is a 93% chance that the family will come to church as well. And so, yes, I do smell what The Rock is cooking, yes. And so, really excited about this series and all that's going to take place over the next 3 weeks. Let me just tell you, we've got surprises up our sleeve for the next 3 weeks, and you don't want to miss any of it. We dream of a church that challenges men to live life fully alive, fully alert, awake. You know, it was said 150 years ago by Henry David Thoreau. He says, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. I don't want to pastor a church with men who lead lives of quiet desperation. I want us to live out the calling of God on our life. Albert Schweitzer said, the tragedy of life is what dies inside a man while he lives. And then the great theologian William Wallace said, all men die, but not all men truly live. And so this series is about seeing guys live life fully alive. I mean, think about it. For all the dudes here, somebody at some point in time has challenged you and said, man up. Be a man. Suck it up. But here's what happens. Nobody ever stops to tell us what a man really is. What defines us as a man? I mean, think about this. When did you become a man? Like, I think that in 6th grade, every boy should have to go through 3 weeks of this series that we're going to talk about. Because when does a boy become a man? When does that happen? I mean, when did it happen in your life for the dudes that are here? When did you become a man? I mean, is it when a boy can shave? Because there's kids shaving in like 5th grade now, right? I mean, that's some of you here, you're like, I was shaving in 5th grade. I was shaving in like college once a week. And so that whole no shave-ember thing, I struggle through that one, all right? So if that's the case, then, really, does that define a dude? Is that when a boy becomes a man? Is it when he can drive? Is it when you get the keys, you become a man? Is it when a boy sees a naked female that suddenly he becomes a man? Or is it maybe when a guy, has sex? Does that make him a man? Because that's what our world projects on people. Is it when you win your first fight? Right? You get in a fist fight with somebody and you come out all bloody and beat, but it's like you're a man now. Is that what makes you a man? Is it when you graduate? When you move out of the house? I mean, what is it that makes a man? When does a man become a man? And so this series is about talking about when does a man become a man? And we just decided if you're going to do a man series, it needs to be manly, for crying out loud. It's got to be macho. It's got to be tough. It's got to be different. And so this series is going to be different. We got man music. We got wrestling sound effects. I mean, just for a moment, be honest, there's no judging. How many of you growing up, you love watching some wrestling? Just own it right now, put that hand up. I know you're concerned what others are going to think. all over this room. All over this room, love and some wrestling. So we're going to have some fun with this series. There's going to be a lot of wrestling references and themes. So there's man music. Dudes love competition. We're going to have some man competition every week. There's going to be a challenge between some guys. We're going to have man cards, which, by the way, you will receive a man card today, guys. Now, guys, never lose your man card, okay? So as a church, we're going to help you with this. Every week that you are in attendance here at Lifepoint, you're going to receive a man card. Put it in a safe place. So on your way out today, our team will give you a man card. Now, I don't want anybody, don't cheat and go steal extra man cards, all right? You're going to get a man card for each week that you're here. And then on top of that, ladies, listen up. This is where you help your man out, all right? So if you catch your man doing something manly, and by manly, I mean serving around the house or serving somebody in some way. So you walk in, and in the kitchen is your man, and he's washing dishes. When you get up off the floor from passing out, I want you to stealthily snap a photo of him, put it on Facebook, brag about them. Let me let you in on a secret, ladies. If you brag about him washing dishes, he'll probably wash more dishes. Us guys love that. So brag on him. Tag us as a church. Tag us in it. And that following weekend, when they come here, he'll get an extra man card. So the more man cards you get, here's what you're going to do. On Father's Day, we wrap this series up. We're going to have a man cave. And in this man cave is a place for you to take all of your man cards. And this is the only acceptable time to surrender your man card. You will take your man card, you will enter it for a chance to win an incredible, awesome, manly prize pack. And so you want to make sure you get as many of these man cards and don't lose them. If you come and you're like, I had like 12 man cards, but I lost them, I'll be like, sorry, you lost your man card. No good. So you're going to hang on to these Father's Day, turn them in. So you want to be here, you want to do manly things, serve in incredible ways. So you're going to need to know about the man card, man cave on Father's Day. Also, we've got some ringside seats. Give it up for my ringside crew right here. So it wouldn't be a wrestling match without ringside seats. And as I said, one of the things we're going to do each week is a competition. I think this would be a great time for us to throw in what I would call our manathon, and it is a competition. And to do this, I need 2 volunteers. I need one from this side of the room and one from this side. If you like basketball, that's a good thing. So who here's, all right, I see a hand really tall. It's like your hand's like 12 feet taller than everybody else. Yeah, come on up here. Come on down front, right down front. I need one more person from over here. Don't be intimidated because I just said he's tall. Right over here. Go ahead. Come on. Okay, come right down front here, guys. Right down on the floor because I'm going to send you over that way. So here's what we're going to do. In honor of the NBA Finals, all right, in honor of the NBA, give me names real quick.
Jeremy.
All right, guys, this is Jeremy, and Jeremy, this is your team. You guys are Team Jeremy, or shall I say, you are going to represent the Cavs and LeBron James. So like it or not, you are a LeBron James fan right now. So go ahead and slip that on. All right, name?
Jim.
All right, guys, this is Jim. Give it up for Jim. Team Jim. Jim, you are Golden State, and you are Steph Curry. Chef Curry, everybody. So, here's how this is going to go down. Each of these guys are going to get 1 minute. We have the free throw line taped off, and it is as many baskets as they can nail in 1 minute. In 3, 2, 1, go.
Everybody get up, it's time
All
to
right,
slam
the guys are
now.
off. They're
We
shooting,
got
we're on the
real
board.
jam
Cavs
going
are on
down.
the board.
Welcome to the Space Jam.
All
Here's
right.
your chance, do your dance at
Cavs
the
have got
Space
2.
Jam.
All right, Golden State is on the board. Let them hear you. Let them hear you. Cheer for your team, guys. Come on. We're down to 40 seconds remaining.
Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam. Come on and slam.
What it is now? Oh, they're going crazy. There we go. All right, keeping it going. 25 seconds remaining. 25 remaining.
What you gonna do? Hey, yo, what you gonna do? Hey, yo, what you gonna do? Party
We got
people in the house,
15
let's go.
seconds.
It's your boy JT. So pass that thing and watch me.
All right.
Behind my back, you know
Keep
what's
going,
next.
keep going,
Jam,
keep going.
all in your face. What's up? Just feel the bass. Dropping, rocking down the room. Shake it quick and space to move. Just work that body, work that body. Make sure you don't hurt
Time
nobody.
is up. All right, come on back up here, guys. Come on up this side. You can leave it on for now. Come on up the steps. Come on. I have special seating just for you guys. Come on up here. Come on up here. So, all right. So, just for the record, this is our second service of the day, and Cleveland has won both times. I don't know if that's any foreshadowing of the game tonight. You need the victory. I hate that Kyrie is hurt. So we're going to, we'll see what happens tonight. So here, we have special seating just for you guys. All right, this right here, hold on. Jim, don't sit there just yet. That's the throne of champions. And so go ahead and take a seat in the throne of champions. Jim, you were over here. We call this the seat of shame. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing. So go grab your coffee. Get your coffee. I don't want anybody dozing off. We do have an energy drink for you, but go ahead and get your coffee. And so here's what we do, just so that as these guys are up here and to entice you to participate in future competitions. So for our throne of champions, we've got a wake and bacon donut with a side of bacon. And we've got a Monster energy drink. So kick back, take notes, enjoy. And then for the seat of shame, we have a Fit and Light yogurt, a croissant, and a green tea. So how about one more time? Give it up for these guys. Thank you guys for being such good sports, and I think they've got some note cards, so they're good to go to follow along. And ringside, how's my ringside seats going? Are we good? Are we good? Are we good? One more all the way around? Yeah. So here's where we're going. Here's where we're going with this series, guys. We're going to be taking 3 weeks, and we're talking about 3 battles that every guy fights. 3 battles that every guy fights. And so today, let's talk about this first battle that every single dude is going to fight. If you haven't fought it, you will fight it. You will fight it. That's great English right there. You can have bad English in a man series. I think that's okay. So here's a battle that we're all going to fight. I want you to write this in your notes somewhere. Every dude is going to fight a battle for their identity. We will all fight the battle of identity. Identity is a big deal. Your name is a big deal. Have you ever stopped to wonder how wrestlers, how'd they get that name? Right? Some wrestling names are just crazy. Like, Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Like, who comes up with that? Like, did they have like a brainstorming meeting? Like, was there a moment where it's like, I'm gonna get my friends together and we're gonna brainstorm. I need a name that strikes fear in the hearts of children. That's what I need. And where do they come up with these names like the Grave Digger and Mr. Perfect? Like, how conceited do you have to be to call yourself Mr. Perfect? So I thought I would have a little bit of useless wrestling trivia to just test your knowledge, all right? Lots of wrestling fans here. So I'm going to give you a wrestler's name, and then you tell me which wrestler that is, okay? I'm going to give you their real name, and you try to give me their wrestling name, all right? So we'll start really easy. This first one, his real name is Steve Williams. He wrestles by the name of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Quick little side note. This is all free here. So, did you know that wasn't always his wrestling name? He went from Steve Williams to wrestling under the name Steve Austin to then wrestling under the name Stunning Steve Austin. Okay? Then he changed company and they wanted to name him the Ringmaster, but he's like, that just doesn't sound like nobody's scared of the Ringmaster. So one day he's like, I need a name, and he's with his fiance, and they're trying to come up with a name that kind of, he wants something that communicates cold, like freezing, and so his fiance's like, hey, you better drink your tea before it gets stone cold, and they stopped, and they were like, that is your name, Stone Cold. Now some of you are like, really? I thought it would be like much more manlier. I think it was like an Earl Grey tea that he was drinking as well, so total, like he loses his man card over that one. Okay, that was easy, that was an easy one. This next one, he wrestled originally under the name the Monster Eiffel Tower. His real name is Andre Rousimov. What is his wrestling name that he's famous for? Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant. All right, that was pretty easy as well. Okay, so this guy, his real name is Jim Hellwig. Jim Hellwig, which I think is pretty, like if you have hell in your name, just roll with it. That is your name. Wrestling in this corner, the Hellwig, like that would just, I could just see crazy hair and all that. So his original name was the Modern Day Warrior or the Dingo Warrior before he became famous as the Ultimate Warrior. Which, by the way, did you know that he legally changed his name to the Ultimate Warrior in 1993? Could you imagine, like, you're leaving the grocery store and they're like, we're going to need to see some ID? That would just be hilarious. Like, you are the Ultimate Warrior. Amazing. Amazing. Okay, couple more. All right, so this guy's real name is Terry Bollea. Wrestled under the name Terry Boulder. Hulk Hogan, you're absolutely right. Vince McMahon one day said, you look like Lou Ferrigno. You look like the Hulk. And so suddenly he became Hulk Hogan. All right? One last one. His real name is Randy Puffo. Wrestled under the name The Spider. Someone said, you wrestle like a savage. You should be Randy Savage. And that wasn't enough. He became Randy the Macho Man Savage. There you go. That is your bit of useless wrestling trivia. We are all dumber because of it. So I've titled this first message, Macho Man. Macho Man. Not to be confused with Macho Man, which is a song by the Village People, which is the totally wrong direction we're trying to go with this series, okay? Macho Man. So here's what I want you to know. Every dude here, and ladies, I want you to know this as well. Your name is a big deal. Look at your neighbor and say, your name is a big deal. When people hear your name, they will develop an idea of who you are just based on your name. You are known for your name. So your name is a big deal. Your name is linked to your identity. So throughout this series, we're going to be studying a guy in the Bible who is known for a great name. And so we're going to look at a guy that we're going to literally try to train with him for the next 3 weeks. Kind of like Rocky Balboa training with Apollo Creed. Apollo made him better. And so we're going to look at this guy as a training partner for the next 3 weeks. This guy in the Bible, we find him in the Old Testament. They refer back to him in the New Testament. This guy's name is David. David's the guy. For 3 weeks, we're going to spend time looking into his life, and even God says some powerful things about this guy named David. Listen to this. In the New Testament book of Acts, chapter 13, verse 22, we're told that God says this about David. I mean, check this out, guys. This is crazy. This is what I want God to say about me someday. God said this about David. He says, I have found David, son of Jesse, a what? Say it with me. A man after my own heart. Wouldn't that be awesome? Someday, God speaks over you. Jeff is a man after God's own heart. Andrew is a man after God's own heart. That's some incredible accolades spoken over you by God himself. And let me just tell you, in our world today, men after God's own heart are a rare find. We need to see more men stepping up as the ladies are amening that. Check this out. Friend of mine tweeted this last week. They said there were 13 million more women in church today than men. Guys, that imperfectly perfect girl was sitting alone praying for you. Praying for you. Dudes, if I'm a single guy, I'm coming to church because the odds are good. They are in your favor. In your favor. So here's what we know about David. David is a man that chased after God. You can see, as guys, we chase after all kinds of things. We chase after girls. We chase after hobbies. We chase after careers. We chase after adventure. And then there's David. And David chased after God, and that made all the difference in his life. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy David at all. Let me just give you a little backstory. A little bit of reference about this guy David if you're not familiar with him. He's most known in 1 Samuel. You can find this in your Bible. If you have a Bible, go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. That's where we're going to park out. If you don't own a Bible but you got a smartphone or a tablet, feel free to take it out and get your digital Bible out. We're cool with that. If you don't own a Bible, we'd love to give you one. On your way out today, stop by our guest services. Just say, can I have a Bible? We give them away every week. We want you to have them. But you'll find the story of David in 1 Samuel chapter 16. This is when we begin to learn about him. Now, his most famous accomplishment is a battle that he fought as he was greatly outsized, and he fought this huge giant. Do you know the giant's name? If you know it, shout it. His name was Goliath. Yeah, Goliath's over 9 feet tall. And so we know David for being the little guy that took down the big giant, but the Bible tells us so much more about him. As a matter of fact, when we first meet David, we discover that he's got all these brothers. He's the youngest of 8 brothers. And so one day, God sends a prophet to David's house to anoint the very next king of Israel. Now, this is not how kings are usually named. Usually, the next king is growing up in the home of the current king. That's how it works. But God says, I do things differently. And so God sends a prophet named Samuel to David's house. David's dad's name is Jesse. And so he shows up one day, and you got to imagine, a prophet of God shows up at your house. You're like, oh my goodness, what are you doing here? And he says, don't worry, I'm here because one of your sons is going to be the next king. So let's throw a party, get all your boys here, and then I'm going to anoint the next king, and then we're going to sit down and we're going to eat. And so Jesse rounds up his boys, and he brings them all, and they gather there, and all of a sudden, Samuel looks at the very oldest son. His name is Eliab, and he's like, man, this dude is like total package. Like, he's got the look. I mean, his hair part's just right. He's probably got a good tan, muscles going on. I mean, it's like, this is king material. Total package. Mr. Perfect here. That's what he's saying. And all of a sudden, God says, no, that's not the one. Says, you're looking at the outward appearance, but God doesn't judge by the outward appearance. God judges by the heart. That's not the one. And so he goes down the line, literally goes through all of the kids. And he looks at Jesse and he's like, are these all your boys? Because it's none of these guys. And then Jesse's like, well, I do have one other son. Which, I mean, if you're David and somebody shows up saying one of your boys is going to be king and you don't even get invited to the party, like dad doesn't even think you're king material, how many counseling sessions does it take to work that out of your psyche, right? My own dad didn't believe in me. And so Samuel says, we're not doing anything until he gets here. So David shows up. He's out in the field. He's a shepherd. And all of a sudden, Samuel looks at him and he anoints him. He's like, that's the one. That's the one. And suddenly this moment changes everything in David's life. And crazy thing is, so after this party, after this moment, guess what David does? He has to go back out to the field, back to watching sheep. I mean, it's what he does. And so we never forget this moment in his life, though. Now, something else that you need to know about David is David had an interesting skill set. Very talented guy. We're told that, he obviously was a shepherd, so he knew how to care for sheep. He knew how to defend sheep, but he also was a musician. All right, David played what's called the lyre. It's like a harp. And so here's this musician guy, and this musician, so you kind of get this picture, like David's like a musician, all right? So picture probably skinny jeans, maybe a scarf, I don't know, definitely more, he's in touch with his feelings. And so he would write a lot of poetry. And matter of fact, his harp playing got him an audience before the king. The king would struggle. He was tormented by an evil spirit. And so he said, get me somebody that can play the harp and calm me down. And so they find David. Look at this in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 18. It says, one of the king's servants said, I've seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the lyre or the harp. He's a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well and is fine looking, and the Lord is with him. So we know that David is tender, but he's also tough. I mean, he's a musician, but he's a warrior. Ladies, if you are single and you're looking for a dude, look, this is a good description right here. He's brave, a warrior, speaks well, he's fine looking, and the Lord is with him. And if he happens to play an instrument, that's a bonus. So that's the guy we're talking about. So here's this tender guy who's playing ballads for the king to calm him down. But lest you think he's a wimp, you need to know he's a tough joker too. I mean, when he's out watching the sheep, lions would attack, bears would attack, and he would take those jokers down with a slingshot, nonetheless. Just, pow, take them out. I mean, that's hardcore right there. I mean, give me a shotgun maybe, but they didn't have those back then. So he had a slingshot. And so this guy was tough. We know that he killed a giant. That's a big deal. And then, but let me just tell you, killing a giant, we always put that as like the pinnacle, the crowning achievement, like the most courageous thing that he ever did. But can I tell you, I don't think that's the most courageous thing that David ever did. You see, as David was gaining in accolades and he was gaining in popularity, people started writing songs about David. Literally, the women of the town would write songs about David. They would say, the king, Saul has slain his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. And this began to make the king jealous. He couldn't stand it. And so the king's like, I need to find a way to get rid of this little snot-nosed guy named David. He's challenging my throne. But then the king realized that one of his daughters was like enamored with David. Like, David, love him. Love him, like posters of David on her bedroom wall. I mean, it's kind of sick, right? Like, David, he's so dreamy. So the king is like, I know what I'll do. I will offer my daughter to him in exchange for some ridiculous bride price. Check this out. Check this out. So this is in the Bible. 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 20. Now Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David. He's so dreamy. And when they told Saul about it, he was pleased. I will give her to him. What a nice dad right there, right? I'm going to give her to him. But check this out, verse 25. Saul replied this. He said, say to David, the king wants no other price for the bride than 100 Philistine foreskins. Yes. That's exactly what I just said. Some of you are like, is that in the Bible? Look, I don't know if you read the Bible much. There's some crazy stuff in there. I'm not making this up. It's in the Bible. So the king is like, you can marry my daughter. And David's like, oh, this is cool. I get to be like son-in-law to the king. in exchange, I'm going to need 100 Philistine foreskins. So I'm not going to go into detail about that. But you need to understand, Philistines were the enemies of Israel. So what the king is really doing, he's like, there's no way David can pull this off, right? There's no way that David can survive this. So I'm going to give him this ridiculous task, and he's going to die in the process, and he's gone. And I look like, a good guy that was giving him a great opportunity to marry my daughter. So the king wants no other price for the bride than 100 Philistine foreskins to take revenge on his enemies. Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistines. Now, I don't know, guys, what you gave in exchange for your wife, but this is probably a little different. I mean, I remember I saved a lot of money, bought a ring. This is crazy. So, verse 26. I just want you to know, this is like the guy that we're studying for 3 weeks. So I want you to just be excited to get to know him really well and train with him. Verse 26. When the attendants told David these things, he was pleased to become the king's son-in-law. So before the allotted time elapsed, David took his men with him and went out and killed 200 Philistines. How many did he need to kill? 100. He killed 200 Philistines and brought back their foreskins. This is the next part that kind of trips me out. They counted out the full number to the king. 97, 98, 99. I mean, I got a whole nother 100 here. Yeah, say what? So that's just, it's in there. I just want you to know that's in the Bible. So they counted them out. So that David might become the king's son-in-law. Then Saul gave him his daughter Michal in marriage. And verse 28 says, when Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved David, Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy for the rest of his days. So Saul is this enemy, and what happens is Saul tries to kill David. I mean, literally throws spears at him as he's playing the harp. I mean, Saul's just twisted, and so David has to run for his life. And so he goes from being this shepherd boy to this warrior that wins this battle, to now he's like son-in-law of the king. He's in the palace. He went from the pasture to the palace, and now he's on the run, and he's running for his life, and his men are with him. They're living in caves. They're doing everything they can to survive. Like, he's all over the map. And we realize this is the guy we're studying for the next 3 weeks. Now, let me tell you, lest you think David is perfect, he is not perfect. This guy messed up royally. There's a time where he should have been off at war, and he wasn't, and he's walking the palace, the roof of his palace, and he sees this woman bathing, and she's beautiful. And he says, I want her to come here, and he sleeps with her, and he gets her pregnant. And then to try to cover it up, he invites her husband to come home from battle, hoping that he would sleep with his wife and think that the child is his, but that guy doesn't do that. He's like, as long as my troops are in battle, I can't be with my wife. That wouldn't be right. So David realized, how do I cover this up? And so he has him murdered. So this guy we're going to be studying has messed up royally. See, some of us, we're told to be like these guys in the Bible, and we're like, I can never live up to that. Well, let me just tell you, this guy's far from perfect. And you're far from perfect, and I'm far from perfect. And this is yet a guy who is known as a man after what? God's own heart. So at the end of his life, he's a powerful king. A powerful king. He goes from this ordinary shepherd to this extraordinary leader, from a nobody to a somebody, from the pasture to the palace. And so we're going to study his life. But you need to know he didn't get there without a fight. He didn't get there without a fight. And you're not going to step into your calling for your life without a battle, without a fight. And it is a fight for your identity. And as guys, we tend to find our identity in all the wrong things. We find it in who we're with. If we got a girl by our side, then we're somebody. And so if we don't have anybody, if we lose that person, we've lost our identity. We find our identity in what we do, the job, and if we lose a job, we lose our identity. We find our identity in maybe what we used to do. So maybe there was an accomplishment. Maybe you won the state, you won the state championship years ago in high school, and you've never moved on. You were stuck living the glory days, and yet you're never going to discover your identity until you step in to the present and what God has for you. Some of us, we find our identity in how we look, and so we get big muscles, we're big men. And can I tell you, all those things, they're good things, but they're terrible things to allow to define you. None of this stuff should be the defining factor in your life. Here's what I want you to write down. This is what David teaches us this first week. Write this in your notes somewhere. We learn from David that only God can define me because only God knows the real me. Would you write that down? Only God can define me because only God knows the real me. Here's why this is a big deal. Here's why this is a big deal. Because in this life, everybody around you will try to define you. People will mean well, and they will give you an identity. If you're not careful, you'll listen to them more than you'll listen to the one that created you. This happened in David's life, but he tuned into the voice of God over all others. Listen to what he said in one of his poetry moments. In Psalm 139, verse 13, he says this to God, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." God, you made me. Look at this in verse 16. He says, "All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." David's acknowledging, God, you know me better than I know myself. You know things about me that I wish nobody else knew, and yet you love me anyway. I mean, isn't that a good thing? God knows you, and he loves you. And so David had every reason, because of the voices in his life, to step out of the ring. But instead, he didn't wimp out. He stepped up, and he stepped into what God had for him. So I want to share with you some of the voices that tried to define him. Here's the first one. Because he dealt with this, let me tell you, you will as well. The first thing he had to do is this. He had to push back, and he didn't allow his family to define him. His family didn't define him. Some of us, we've been defined by our family, our heritage, our upbringing, and in some cases, that's a great thing. But in many cases, it's not a great thing. Some of you came from a family that you don't want your family now to be anything like the family you came from. But yet you can't seem to escape it. I mean, think about David. He didn't even get invited. He had to work through that. He had serious conflict with his brothers. I mean, he's the younger brother. Younger brothers want nothing more than for the older brother to just enjoy having them around, for the older brother to just acknowledge them every now and again, to just not tear them down for a day. That's what younger brothers want. But older brothers have a tendency of belittling younger brothers. I've often said that little people belittle people. It makes us feel bigger. And so David, he wasn't exempt from that. Matter of fact, the day that he went to go and see the battle where he ends up fighting Goliath, guess what? His older brothers, they're hating on him as he shows up. I mean, look at this. We find this in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 28. It says, when Eliab, this is his oldest brother, heard David speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him, and he asked, "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness?" Can you hear brother speaking down to him? Who'd you leave? Where'd you leave those few sheep? Just a handful of sheep. He says, "I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle." Like, they're not even just, I mean, he's there because dad sent him. That's the reason he's there. But big brother's just trying to talk him out of stepping into what God has called him to. So listen, your family didn't define you. I don't know what was spoken over you when you were a kid. I don't know if someone was in your life. So here's what I know about everybody here. We were all impacted by either the presence or the absence of a dad in our life. We were all impacted by the presence or absence of a male figure in our life. It will shape us. And for some of us, we think about the examples that we had and they weren't good, but we carry them with us. Can I tell you, your family does not define you. You are bigger than that, and God has a plan greater than that. So let's keep going. So he struggled with his family defining him. Here's another thing. His authorities didn't define him. There are authorities in your life that will try to speak over you. It might be a boss. It might be a coach. It might be a teacher. You may have sat in class and your teacher was just spoke down to you and you thought, you know what? They don't see value in me. And if they don't see value in me, I must not be valuable. My coach never gave me a chance, and so I'm just never going to amount to anything. You see, we have authorities in our life. Our boss doesn't see the contribution that we make and the overtime we put in, and I'm never going to arrive. Can't do anything right. And those authorities have a tendency of speaking over us. David dealt with that. As he was standing there at the battle lines asking about this giant and what happens to the person that beats him, all of a sudden that word made its way to the king. And David is standing before the king. And he's like, "I'll take this dude down. I mean, I fought lions and bears, and God that helped me back then will help me now. Let me at him." And all of a sudden the king, I mean, this is the king. Like, you're before the king. Imagine being right there before the president. And then he says this to you. He says, "You were not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him." Like, are you crazy? You can't do this. He says, "You're only a young man, and he's been a warrior from his youth." He's like, you can't do this. Some of us have had an authority figure, someone we look up to in our life, tell us we can't do what God is calling us to do. And it marks us, and it hurts us. I mean, the king finally is like, all right, no one else is stepping up, so if you're going to do it, here, you got to put on all this armor. Like, the king tried to turn a shepherd into a soldier. Can I tell you, there are authorities in your life that will try to turn you into something that you are not. And you've got to cling to the identity that God says about you, because if David had gone to battle wearing the king's armor, he would have got his butt whooped. You can only fight the battles God has ahead of you in the identity that God has created for you. You need to know who you are, and you know that God created you that way. Listen, the people over you, they don't know what God has put in you. And so you can't allow them to define you. So he had to push back from his family, from the authorities, and then guess what? He had to deal with his enemies. His enemies tried to define him, and his enemies didn't define him. Like, he finally makes his way on the battlefield, and you know what Goliath did? He started talking smack to him, taunting him, calling him names. I mean, literally, as David is approaching Goliath, chapter 17 of 1 Samuel says, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over, so he's scanning him. He realizes he's a tiny little guy, but it says he was glowing with health and handsome. If you're going to battle, you don't want anybody to be like, and in this corner, the destroyer. And over here is a young man who's got great health, and he's rather handsome. You want people to be afraid of you. David's not striking fear in the hearts of anybody right now. And so Goliath despised him. Look at verse 43. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. I mean, that's tough. Those are fighting words. Look at your neighbor and say, them's are fighting words. Right? I mean, you're going to throw down. If you get up in my face and you say that to me, we're going, at least, I'm going to, hit you fist with my face or something. We're going. So his enemies didn't define him. They didn't. He didn't listen. Listen, don't be surprised when people who don't like you try to define you. Oh, I can't believe they said that about me on Facebook. I'm pretty sure they were talking about me. I mean, they didn't tag me in the post, but I'm pretty sure. No, they didn't. It's not going down like that. What if David had cowered under the pressure? We don't know how the story would have ended. And many of us, we've cowered under the pressure because there's people that don't like us. Of course they're going to say things about us. That's just what you do towards people you don't like. He said, no, my enemies don't define me. Look at this. Next thing is his social status didn't define him. I mean, this guy, he went from being a nobody in the pasture to becoming a warrior where people wrote songs about him, to being in the palace, to being threatened, to being the king's son-in-law, to being on the run and being a criminal. I mean, could you just imagine if he had Facebook and it would be like, here's what's going on today. Like his status would be crazy. But he didn't cave under all of that pressure. He didn't let his status define him. He never saw himself as a criminal. He saw himself as a man after God's own heart. And your status doesn't define you either. And then the last thing I want to share with you, we go on all day. This is just a few that I think connect with us as dudes. And I think, ladies, I think that you probably connect with this stuff as well. Here's the last thing I want you to see is this. His failures didn't define him. His failures didn't define him. And I'm so grateful that we have a God who gives us second chances and third chances and fourth chances. Isn't that a good thing? That when God says, hey, you might have messed up, but listen, I got more ahead of you. You're better than that. The Bible doesn't say that the righteous never fall. It says they get back up. We get back up. David certainly messed up. And there's a lot of us here, though, we can't seem to move beyond our mistakes. We look at that thing that we wish we could have done differently, or that relationship that we wish we had handled differently, or that job opportunity, and we feel like those opportunities are gone. And listen, we missed the boat set sail and we missed it. Can I tell you, if you're not dead, God's not done. Can I tell you that? God's got more ahead of you. You got to believe it. You got to believe it. David committed adultery and murder. I don't know what you've struggled with. But God said, this is a man after my own heart. We remember his failures, but he's not defined by his failures. You will always remember your failures. Let me just tell you, that's life. But you don't have to be defined by them. And for some of us, that's why you're here today, because God says, listen, I got a whole nother chapter if you just keep reading my story. If you just keep walking out my story, because I know all of your days before you ever set out. I mean, when you got up this morning, God knew what was going to be taking place today. He knows what you're going to have for lunch. How awesome is that? Like, God knows. God knows what you're going to be doing this evening. He knows who's going to win the game tonight, right? Don't you like, God, if you could let me in on that, I'd throw some money on it. And, I mean, we wouldn't in church because we're not gambling. But you might. I'm saying some of you might. But God knows that stuff. Isn't that amazing? To think that he knows that, and he knows the deepest, darkest secrets of your life, and he loves you anyway. And David, he had this moment where he came face to face with his failure and his sin. A friend confronted him, actually. A friend called him out. You got any friends in your life like that will call you out? You got any people they got the ringside seats to your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, and they're like, hey, bro, that's not cool. We got to talk. He had a friend that called him out, and his heart broke. You can read about it in the Psalms. His heart broke before God. And he desired a relationship with God so much, and he just cries out, he repents. Not like my bad, I messed up, oops. Did that happen? Oh no. Because that's what we do a lot. Repenting isn't really repenting in our life. It's more like I got caught, so I should say I'm sorry. But David, man, his heart broke before the Lord because he realized, I want to be in relationship with God. And a holy God cannot be in relationship with sinful man. That's why when you get to the New Testament and Jesus suffers on the cross and dies in our place so we can be in a relationship, that's why that's called the gospel, and that's really good news. And so David realized, man, I want this relationship with God. I am nothing without God. God is my identity. He's my source. He's my strength. He's my provision. He's the one that killed the bear and the lion and the giant. Like it is, me and Jesus, we's like peas and carrots. Like, God, I need you. And he just repents before the Lord, and his relationship with God continues to flourish and grow. But when we look at David's life, we realize the deck was stacked against David. There was not anybody in his corner that was cheering him on. That's why I think for some of the dudes here today, really for all the dudes, I think my challenge to you is when we leave out of here today, we're getting ready to launch a whole new semester of small groups. And many of you guys, if you're going through a tough time, there's nobody in your corner. There's nobody. I mean, you're like, who do I high five when things are going good? Who picks me back up off the mat when I got my butt whooped? Like most of us guys, we have nobody. And we think that because we're dudes, we're tough, we don't need anybody. Can I tell you, you need people. You need people in your life. And I think the manliest thing you could do is walk out there, stop by that small groups table, begin to sign up, say, you know what, I need to get in a group. You're like, but I don't know much about the Bible. I don't know that I don't want to do a Bible study. I don't know. Look, hey, you could be in a group that rides motorcycles. How about that? You're like, okay, I don't have a bike, but hey, there's a good reason to get one. You could be in a group that goes and hangs out at the beach. I mean, I don't care what the group is for. You need friends. And you need people. And you need people that can call you out when you're not living and making the right decisions. And you need people that will encourage you when you're discouraged. And so I would challenge you dudes. I would challenge you dudes to go do that. Matter of fact, I'll give an extra man card for the dudes that go and sign up to be part of a group. I didn't tell the 9:30 service that, so you get a leg up on them. So you get in a group, you get an extra man card. I just encourage you with that. See, here's what David knew. David knew what we would later discover in Romans chapter 8, verse 31, and we sang this in a song this morning. If God is for us, who could be against us? If God is in my corner, I don't care what the world throws at me. I don't care what happened in my family. It may have marked me. It may have been real. It may have been painful, but God has got more ahead of me. I don't care about my enemies. You're always going to have enemies in this life. You stand up for something, guess what? There's going to be people that don't like it. But if God is for me, who could be against me? Who could be against me? See, it only makes sense that if God knows the real you, then the only way for you to find out who you were created to be is to get really close to the one who defined you, who made you, so that you can be who God created you to be. See, we're told that when David was anointed as king, that the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. Can I tell you that if you have a relationship with Jesus Christ, the Bible teaches that when we entered into that relationship with Jesus, meaning we understood that what Jesus did on that cross, the death, his burial, his resurrection, that all of that was done for several reasons. And I don't have time to get into all of it. It was done out of obedience and glory for his heavenly Father, but it was also done so that you and I could be forgiven. Because you and I were in a mess, and God says, I love him too much to leave him there. I'm going to send my only son who is perfect, and he'll pay the price. He paid your debt. And when that happened, when you come to the place where you surrender who you are, your identity and what you're trying to do, and you say, God, I can only find my identity in you. Be my Lord and Savior. When you come to that place, you receive the Spirit of God inside of you. And so when David had the Spirit of God poured over his life, everything began to change. We begin seeing references all through Scripture that the Lord was with him. The Lord was with him. The Lord who rescued him from the paw of the bear and the lion will rescue him from this giant as well. Can I tell you, God's with you. If you have a relationship with him, he's with you. His Spirit will empower you. Look at 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 14. It says, in everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. See, as guys, we believe that success is through the sweat of our brow, and we just got to work harder and do more, and there is something about having a work ethic. But David knew his success was because of his relationship with God. Can I tell you, as a guy, ladies, I don't know if you're aware of this, we feel tremendous pressure. Tremendous pressure as dudes. Man, we got pressure to succeed at our jobs because our family is relying on it. And if I don't do a good job, then I'm not gonna be able to pay the bills, and we're gonna be on the street. And that's tremendous pressure on a dude. Tremendous pressure to provide. But while we're trying to earn a living, we're not being the husband and the dad, and then we feel tremendous pressure to be the best dad and husband. But if we're doing that, then we feel like we're not doing a good job at work, and we're just constantly torn. And you throw church in the mix, we're supposed to be a spiritual leader, and we feel like we're failing at all this stuff. There's a lot of pressure. Dudes, can I tell you, your success is not going to come because you just sucked it up and manned up and tried harder. It's going to come for the same reason that David's did, because the Lord was with him. David found time for the things that God had given him to do. He knew who he was. Guys, let me just ask you this question as we close. Who are you? The real you, not the church you. The real you when no one's around and you're on your computer late at night. Who are you? Who are you when you're at work and guys want to be guys and start, sharing off-colored conversations and jokes? Who are you? Because a lot of times we become different people in different places, and what you find is the real you, whether you're at church or at work or at home or late at night. When you step into that identity that God has created for you, the one that he designed you to be, you don't have to try to pretend. You don't have to put on your wrestling persona and step in the ring. You can just be you. Who are you? See, David's successes and failures amidst all of that, he never lost sight of the fact that the Lord was with him and that he was a man after God's own heart. And I just want to give you a chance today. Your successes and your failures, they hinge on the same thing. Being a man after God's own heart, knowing that the Lord is with you. So here's how I'd love for us to just wrap up our time together. I believe there's many in this room today where you've never had a moment where you came to the place where you realized what Jesus did, he did for you, that you can have a relationship with God. And I just want you to have an opportunity. This is the greatest decision you're ever going to make, is a decision saying, God, I choose to live for you. Like, I received Jesus as my Lord and Savior. What he did on the cross was for me. That wasn't his cross. That was my cross. And so if that's you today, I want to give you an opportunity. So I want to ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes. And will we just have a moment and pray together?